I didn't start reading the Bible because I was looking for God. I started reading it out of pride. I wanted to prove that someone else was wrong, but something unexpected happened. The Bible didn't expose them. It exposed me. I was at work. I don't remember exactly how the conversation started, but at some point, an Albanian coworker said something that upset me. He told me that if I followed the teachings of Muhammad, I would become a better person than if I followed Jesus. To me, that sounded like an insult. Not because I was religious, but because it challenged everything my roots represented. That night, I got home and picked up the Bible. Not to look for God, but to prove he was wrong. If you had asked me a few years ago if God existed, I probably would have said I didn't know, or at least not the way the Bible describes him. I didn't reach that conclusion after serious research. It was more the image I already had in my mind. To me, the Bible automatically meant restrictions, a list of rules that took away your freedom. But that wasn't the only problem. The problem was how I felt when I thought about it. Because the idea that God existed didn't bother me by itself. What bothered me was what that would mean for me. That there would be standards. That I wouldn't be the one deciding what was right and wrong. And honestly, I didn't understand why I should be put in the same category as people I considered worse than me. I hadn't done anything extreme. And yet, the idea was that I would still be a sinner. That didn't seem fair to me. And that was the real conflict. I didn't want to believe that if God existed, I would have to change my life. Because I had already built a simple way of thinking. I decide. I'm in control. I choose. The things I didn't see them as sins. I saw them as normal things. Pleasures, nothing serious. Everyone does them. But if the Bible was right, then I was the one who was wrong. It meant I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And the problem wasn't only what I did, but who I was. That's exactly why it was so hard for me to accept that the Bible could be right. Honestly, I had no expectations. Everything I knew about the Bible came from what I'd heard from others. And most of it wasn't something I liked. Especially the image I had of religious people. Priests, church. People who use others' fear of hell for their own benefit. I always thought religion worked the same way. The good people are accepted, the bad people are rejected. But the more I read, the more it felt like Jesus did the exact opposite. He was looking for the very people I considered lost. People like me. And that completely changed my first impression. As I kept reading, I started seeing something different in Jesus. He wasn't the person I had imagined. He wasn't weak or passive. He confronted religious leaders. He went into the temple and drove out the people who were making money there. That's when my image of him started to change. And yet, the ending of the story was even harder to ignore. Because even though he was rejected, mocked, and condemned, he didn't try to escape. He accepted it all. And for the first time, I saw that idea differently. That if what the Bible says is true, we're not talking about someone who lost control of the situation. We're talking about someone who chose it. And the question that remained was simple. Why would someone do that for me? Until then, I was convinced I had an explanation for everything. If someone talked about God, I always felt there was a more rational answer. I had often heard that only backward people still believed in God, that science had already explained many things that in the past were attributed to Him, and that as we continue to advance, we will explain everything. And if there's something we still can't explain, it just means we don't have the technology or knowledge yet. There were also people who said they didn't need God, that everything they achieved in life was because of their own efforts, that God didn't help them during difficult times, and that even if He existed, they still wouldn't follow Him, because they didn't owe Him anything. For a long time, all these explanations seemed enough for me. But as I kept reading, I noticed something. The questions weren't disappearing, they were multiplying. And I realized that I had also started with a conclusion before truly investigating. I thought I knew. I wasn't looking for contradictions. I was already convinced they existed. But in reality, I was repeating things I had heard from others. And that made me think about something simple. I had many beliefs, but very few of them were actually beliefs I had personally examined. Until then, the problem seemed to be God. But looking back, I think the problem was me. I thought that if the Bible was right, I was lost. But by reading the Bible, I discovered something I had never understood before. I thought God was asking me to become good enough. But the message of the Bible was the exact opposite. I wasn't the one who had to pay the debt. If what I was reading was true, Jesus had already paid it. For the first time, I understood that salvation wasn't a reward. It was a gift. Before, I thought the Bible was taking away my freedom. Today, I believe the exact opposite. I started to see that many of the things I called freedom had actually started controlling me. And slowly, I began letting them go. Not because someone forced me, but because I no longer saw them the same way. I opened the Bible to win an argument. I closed it after losing one. The argument with myself. Maybe the question isn't whether God exists. Maybe the question is whether we are willing to find out the truth, even when it forces us to change. And then I asked myself, if I rejected the Bible before truly examining it, how many of our beliefs are actually just prejudices?